Marvellous. Well, thank you all for coming. This is wonderful. My name is Katie and I am PAL's Marketing and Media Manager. Just so you know, I've got my notes here on the screen in front of me, so I keep track of where we are. So if my eyes are going up and down, that's why, that's what's going on. So this is a free online marketing session for artists and art organisations, hosted by PAL Thanet and funded by Arts Council England. For anyone who doesn't know, PAL Thanet is a charity and our work explores issues around feminism, women and girls. And our events are open to everyone. So even though we're focusing on the subjects of feminism and women and girls, we are very much open to everyone to join those events and be involved in what we do. We're providing these continuing professional development events for free, as we are passionate about assisting artists to improve their business skills and become professionally successful. Because we want these sessions to really be a benefit to you, as Darren's mentioned, and because we may be able to run more in the future, we're asking everyone to fill in a survey for us at the end. So, a little bit about me. My experience is in press, media and marketing. I've got 2 years experience at Turner Contemporary and 9 years experience working freelance for theatre companies and arts organisations nationally. I'm currently working part-time for PAL and I also work for East Kent MenCap as well. So my experience spans arts organisations and charities of various sizes. There will be a Q&A at the end, as we've said, at the end of this session. So if you have any specific questions, I'll probably talk for about 40 minutes maybe, and then we can have about 20 minutes of a Q&A at the end. So let's dive in. So to kick off this session, firstly, we'll be talking about the purpose of marketing. So before you get started with any form of marketing, I find it really valuable to first think about what are you looking to achieve. It's really easy to just dive straight in and start doing social media and things like that. But if you have a clear idea of what you want to achieve first, then you'll be putting your efforts into a really clear and focused way. So some examples of what you might want to achieve with your marketing are to sell products, to sell tickets, to increase your bookings, to raise your profile or your company's profile, to build a network, or simply just to share your work with the world and get some feedback from fellow artists or the public. So they're all reasons you might want to do marketing. All these aims would require a different strategy, so it's important to decide early on what you're looking to achieve. So that would be step one in planning your marketing. It would be deciding on your aim, what are your aims, so that you have a clear purpose going forward. So that's step one. The second thing to think about before you get started with your marketing is your brand. Now this is quite a misunderstood word sometimes. I'm going to try and make it easier to understand. It's a common misconception that branding is all about logos and visual identity and how your company's brand looks. But actually, brand is about your company's personality as a whole. It's the easiest way to think about it. So in the way that when you see the face of someone that you know, it makes you think of their personality. A company's logo, for example, is just one small aspect that reminds customers of the company's whole personality or the full brand. So the brand or personality of your company could include your company's name, your company's core values and mission statement, the style of customer service you offer, staff uniforms, product packaging, company's website, and of course the visual identity in regards to logo, brand colours, design style. So it's all caught up in brand. All of these aspects are included in the brand, but a consistent brand encompasses and guides all aspects of your company or your business. So if you create a consistent brand for your company, you're making it clear and easy for your customers and your potential audience to understand what your company is about and to form a relationship with you and your company, which will ideally encourage them to make a purchase or a booking with you. So it's about having a clear identity that it's easy for your customers to have some form of relationship. So for example, if we consider two distinct brands, I've got Coca-Cola and Tesco as our two examples. When you think about both those brands, Coca-Cola and Tesco, you think clearly of certain colour schemes, certain bold logos, but as well as that, you think of a personality to do with that company as well. So Coca-Cola's brand hinges on happiness and nostalgia, and it uses very simple to understand messaging using words like refreshing. The exciting red colour is used throughout their branding to give it that joyful feeling. So you can see how all these elements of the marketing for that brand are used to express the personality of the company. For Tesco's brand and personality, the key is value for money and friendliness. So they are two core values of Tesco. And again, if you look at any of Tesco's marketing activities, you look at the adverts you see on TV, those two key values are really obvious: value for money and friendliness. So it helps define that identity. So identifying and defining your brand is a bigger project than this session could cover in depth. However, here are 3 things for you to think about regarding brand before you get started. So, firstly, think about what your unique selling point is, what your company's unique selling point is. What is it that your company, and when I say company, I also mean if we've got any individuals here who, if you're an artist basically selling your own artworks, you are still a company in a way. So when I say unique selling point, what is it that you or your company brings to the marketplace that no other company does? What's unique? What unique offer do you bring to customers? So that's the first thing to think about. Secondly, really important, and this actually is often maybe not focused on as much as it should be in art circles, is to really think about who are your customers. You are creating, even if you're creating a piece of art, you're creating a piece of art for someone if you want them to buy it. So they are your customers. So it's really important to think of those customers. And of course, if you're selling fine art to collectors, you're going to position yourself differently to if you're selling children's clothes, for example. So again, that's why it's so important to think about who your customers are. And thirdly, which links into the first two, the unique selling point and the customers, the third point is to think about what your core values are that guide your company. So this is similar to what we've just spoken about with Tesco and Coca-Cola. So think about your unique selling point and your customers. And when you're working on these core values, really try and get an idea of what you want to present to customers that's going to persuade them to buy your product or to engage with your service. So words you could think about for these core values include friendliness, modern, freedom, happiness, low prices, creativity. You can find lists of other words online to inspire you. So that's something to think about. That is worth spending some time really thinking about that and defining your brand. I've got an interesting list here from cultbranding.com of some other companies and their main brand values, which I find really helps to identify the idea of brand. So, for example, Apple's key brand value is creativity. For Harley-Davidson, it's freedom. For Nike, it's victory. For Coca-Cola, it's happiness. For IKEA, it's possibility. For Amazon, it's convenience. And for Google, it's accessible information. So I hope those examples really try and clarify that idea of what brand is in your head and how that definition can help really focus the marketing that you're doing. So it's a good thought exercise to pick one of these companies or maybe another one that's similar to what you're looking to do, and to look at all their marketing materials from that company and see how every aspect of how they present the company is informed by those brand values. Or maybe isn't if they're not being as successful at it. That's quite interesting to look at as well. I find it's good to have 3 to 5 brand values to help really guide your organisation while still keeping it focused and manageable. Identifying your brand will shape your mind and ensure your communications are consistent while expressing a clear company identity. So that's brand. Once you've got a handle on why you are doing your marketing, which is your purpose, which is what we started with, and your organisation's personality, which is your brand, as we've just covered, you can now think about what marketing would be effective for you. We'll start with thinking about the aspect of marketing that most people think of first, which is social media. Now, with social media, a common perception is that you have to use all social media channels and post on every channel every day, but unless you've got a dedicated marketing team, that is likely not viable, which is fair enough. So what I recommend is for you to consider how much time you genuinely have each week to dedicate to marketing. And that is how much time you feel comfortable giving to it as well. There's no point running yourself ragged. So think about how much time you have available each week, and then choose the best channels or channel for your purpose for you to focus on. One thing to remember about social media is that more is not more. Quality is far better than quantity. It's much better to run one social media channel well than to spread yourself too thin over multiple channels. And it's much better to post one brilliant post a week, for example, than to post multiple posts that are weaker multiple times a day. All social media channels provide some kind of analytics tools, so they give you some data about how many people are viewing your posts and how engaged they are. And I'd encourage you to have a look at those and to learn how to use them. The key aspect of analytics is to remember that engagement, that's how many times people click, how many times people comment. Engagement is far more important than huge numbers of followers. You could have 100,000 followers, but if you have a low engagement rate, it won't mean a huge amount to your sales. Whereas if you have a following of, say, 5,000 who are highly engaged with you and your work, you would likely see a greater return on your social media marketing. So that's something to think about. It's not about followers, it's about engagement. Just going to grab a drink. So let's think about each of the main social media channels, and you can have a think about each one and whether they are relevant to your purpose, relevant to your brand as well, and to the content you plan on creating. So I'll start with the big three, which are Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. What's important to remember is that they are all social media channels, but they all function in different ways, and users use them in very different ways. To help myself be clear on the difference between each one, I have a buzzword for each of those three social media channels, which I'm going to share with you, which I hope helps clarify the difference between each one. So for Twitter, my buzzword to help understand it is now. This means that the content that does well on Twitter is content that is relevant right now and likely won't be relevant tomorrow or in a couple of weeks. So it's a great place for news stories and for engaging with current trends and for being part of conversations that are happening right now. So if your organisation does campaigning or a lot of networking, Twitter could be a great useful platform for you. For Facebook, my buzzword is value. Now, Facebook is nowhere near as cool as it once was, and there has started to be a migration away from it, particularly with young people. However, it is really important to remember that it still has far more users than Twitter and Instagram combined. So recent data shows that there are 330 million Twitter users currently, 1 billion monthly active users on Instagram, and 2.6 billion monthly active users on Facebook. So Facebook is still more than twice as big. So we're not giving up with Facebook yet. Facebook very much still rules the roost. The reason I use my buzzword of value for Facebook, which is significant to note, is that more than Twitter and Instagram, Facebook users are looking for value in their content, by which I mean they want to get something out of it. That might be information about an event that they might want to go to, reviews on a product they might want to buy, giveaways of products, discount codes, content that has a value to them, something that they can take away from it, whether it's tangible or whether it's information. It's for this reason that Facebook is still such a valuable platform, and for me personally, I still consider it as currently the platform you're likely to get the most return from, depending on the situation. But that's because it's commonly used for this active purpose. The users on there are actively looking for something. In my experience, when it comes to selling tickets or selling a product, Facebook tends to be the top performing social media channel by quite some way. because it is set up to support that function. Then we have Instagram. Now, my buzzword for Instagram is vanity. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. It should be no surprise to anyone that the content that does well on Instagram is beautiful images. If you want to get high engagement on Instagram, post photos of attractive faces and sunsets. It's depressing, but it's true. Now, that is an oversimplification, but it is incredibly true, and that is why I use the buzzword of vanity for Instagram, as even if you have a profound message or a revolutionary product to share, if it's not presented in that Instagram way, it will not get the engagement. What's important to remember too about Instagram is even if you have a well-followed and highly engaged with Instagram account, it's important to really pay attention to the return you're getting from that platform. It's really easy to give a huge amount of time to curating a beautiful feed that gets great engagement. But if your aim is selling products and you're not getting sales from Instagram, it might be worth rethinking your strategy. That said, Instagram can be a great way to present an online portfolio. I know a lot of smaller scale artists and makers who maintain their Instagram as a kind of organic portfolio alongside their website or alongside an Etsy shop or something like that, which is more their main portfolio and their selling platform. And that can be a really effective combination. Other social media channels you may want to consider include YouTube. Now, the great thing about YouTube is it is incredibly accessible, as you don't need a personal profile, you don't need to necessarily log in to be able to view content, and it is very user-friendly. If you plan on creating high-quality video content and you have the skills and the tech to do so, then YouTube can be a really rewarding platform for building an engaged following. To get the most from your YouTube channel, it is best to try and ensure your content is evergreen, by which I mean if someone watches your video in 2 years' time, they're not alienated by it, it's still relevant in some form. You want to be building this library of content that should be relevant and remain relevant to your followers. That's one of the reasons I really love YouTube, because you're building on it rather than having something new every day. If you don't already have plans to create regular video content, I would say do not feel the need to have YouTube, as it is a lot of work and it has to be quality video for it to be successful. So if it's not something you're considering, don't worry about it. And then the last social media channel I'd like to mention specifically is LinkedIn. This is a great social media channel to sign up for, as it's essentially an online CV for individuals and a business page for companies. It's a great way to build a professional network for you and your business. It's a different audience, and it could be really useful to you. When you post to LinkedIn, it's important to remember that it's a different audience to the other channels, and so only post work-related stories and focus on the business angle of stories. So, for example, if I did some branding work with a company, I would post those new values or the visual branding designs to the company's LinkedIn feed and talk about the purpose and the process and the benefits of that rebrand. So to have that business angle. Just make sure you get the tone right on LinkedIn. General thoughts for all of your social media channels, some key points to remember. Quality, not quantity. So I'm talking high quality images, well-edited videos, clear descriptions, and focus stories. Present the human angle. So talk about people, have a personality, have that company identity really come through and connect with your customers. And 3, only commit to channels and to posting schedules that you are able to maintain long term. Okay, so for most businesses, I tend to recommend posting once a day to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram using scheduling software such as Hootsuite or Later to make it more manageable. If you're an individual, I'd probably tend to recommend you focus on 1 or 2 channels, whatever you feel comfortable with doing, and then maybe only post a couple of times a week, but make sure those posts are really high quality, valuable posts. The key is making it manageable for you. You shouldn't let social media stress you out, so do what you feel comfortable with. The key thing to remember about social media is that it is not the be all and end all of marketing. It is just one tool in your toolbox, so shouldn't be used in isolation. Which leads us on to other forms of marketing that you might want to consider. So, another important aspect of marketing to think about is your website. A good website is really important, whatever your purpose, as it is your shop front. If you are a purely online company, it is the face of your business. A really great website should clearly present your company's personality, your brand, as we've discussed, and make it easy for your customers to engage with you in the way you wish them to. So whether that's through purchasing products or making bookings or signing up to a mailing list or leaving comments on your work, if that's what you're interested in. All your marketing from other sources, whether that's from social media or adverts, should point traffic back to your website, as you have the most control over what is on your website, as it's where you present your products and your services, and you can control that whole space. There is a lot of information out there online about how to design a brilliant website, so do have a Google if you're interested in creating your own. Websites do not need to be complicated, and one of the most important things to think about is your customer's journey on your website, which basically means, can a customer who comes to your website easily find what they were looking for in 1 or 2 clicks? Key aspects to think about when setting up a website include, is your homepage engaging? So it's the front cover of your website and you want to motivate customers to dig further into the website with that homepage. So if they come to a web page and it's not very exciting, are they going to get bored and go somewhere else? If they come to your homepage and it's really confusing, are they going to just not be interested and go somewhere else? So really think about that homepage and think about it as the front cover to your website. Also think about if the navigation is clear on your website. So are the menus clearly labelled? Are key pages easy to find, such as the Contact Us page? A great way to check this is to simply ask a number of friends to have a look at your website and see if they are able to find certain things. Set them a task, say, find my phone number on my website or something like that, and see how long it takes them. Let them know if they get frustrated, let them tell you. And another important thing to think about when you're doing a website is to think about the language you're using. And this does actually cover all marketing as well, but particularly important on your website. It's easy to think that if we use complicated and flowery language, it seems more impressive, but it's important to remember that a website is available to everyone on the internet potentially. And as such, your potential audience is diverse in regards to knowledge, understanding, experience, language skills. So keep your language accessible and easy to understand. Try to avoid being too mystical or too poetic and focus on clearly communicating your message. Key thing to remember is customers will not be persuaded to buy your product if they are confused about what you're offering. If they're confused about what you're offering, they're just going to turn off and go elsewhere. They're not even going to ask you the questions if it's on a website. Regarding the practical aspects of setting up a website, I've used WordPress a lot for a lot of organizations, and it seems to generally be seen as a great platform for websites. You can create your own website on there, either using the templates provided or you can create from scratch. Alternatively, if you've got some budget, it might be worth paying a designer to set up your website initially. They can do the main framework and then you can do the content edits going forward, which is quite an affordable way of doing it. This is all budget dependent, of course, so you'd need to think about how much money you would like to put into your website and how much is financially viable for you. Another aspect of marketing that it could be good for you to think about is email marketing and the value of building a mailing list. Now, it's really easy to set up a mailing list. I know artists and performers who organise their own mailing lists simply by having a piece of paper at the end of a show or a gig for audience members to sign up to, and then the artist sends around a simple email once a month with relevant information about their latest pieces or performances. So you can keep it that simple. If you're looking to do a bit more with email and to get the best out of it, you might want to try looking into a platform like MailChimp. If you give it a quick Google, that can assist you as it's a really user-friendly platform. It's free if you have under 2,000 subscribers, I think, and you can design really professional-looking emails easily. There are also some really good analytics through MailChimp that you won't get through sending emails via Gmail, for example. And those analytics mean you can monitor your open rates and your click rates, so you can keep developing your newsletter to be increasingly effective. It is important to be aware of GDPR when talking about mailing lists in particular, as they are essentially a list of people's data. So be aware that you are only allowed to send newsletters to people who have subscribed. You have to store people's data, such as their email addresses, securely. And if someone asks to unsubscribe, then you must unsubscribe them. The easiest way to stay on top of this, actually, I've found, is to use a trusted platform like MailChimp or similar, as they are set up to help you be GDPR compliant now. So it's worth looking into platforms like that and to have that awareness of GDPR. An engaged email mailing list is really worth its weight in gold. And when I've been a part of fundraising drives and selling tickets in the past, the vast majority of positive responses, so sales or donations, have come from email mailing lists quite vastly. So it's something to really consider if you feel able to do it. When people sign up to your e-newsletter, they are giving you permission to send a message directly to their inbox, which is a much more personal space than social media or on a social media feed. And that is partly why it's so effective to have an email mailing list. I will now talk briefly about advertising options that you have. But there are many paths in this area that you could have a look at, all very dependent on what your purpose is, what audience you're looking to reach, and also what your budget is, of course. But in advertising, you could look at paid advertising that could range from a £20 Facebook ad to a few £100s on an ad in a local newspaper, to a few £1,000s in a specialist national magazine, up to tens of thousands of pounds and more in the big global magazines like Vogue, for instance. I remember looking at the pricing list for Vogue advertising, and it's quite eye-watering, but equally understandable because their reach is vast. So if you're going to do some advertising, think about what your purpose is, what your audience is, and how much you can afford. It is a sliding scale, as I say. The key things to think about are, what are you trying to achieve with this advertising? What audiences are you looking to reach? And is the financial investment worth it? Another option for paid advertising that I found useful is radio ads on local radio stations. All you have to do is write the basic script for the ad, normally 30 seconds maybe, and the station typically will produce the ad for you for a small fee, which I tend to find is pretty reasonable, and that's an option. And then that advert will be repeated a certain number of times over a certain number of days. That's another way to reach a different type of audience. If you have a very low budget, do think about posters and flyers. Very cheap to get printed. You could design them yourself. You could ask a designer to do them for you. And if what you're doing has local interest, many shops and establishments are happy to put them in their windows, if asked nicely. One thing to be aware of right now is establishments aren't as happy to have leaflets out due to COVID. So you might want to focus more on posters for shop windows rather than leaflets to leave on tables, just to avoid things that might be touched. There are concerns around that, understandably. And another marketing option, which I will mention, but with a word of caution, is guerrilla marketing. You may or may not have heard that phrase, but essentially it's a marketing and advertising strategy where surprising and unexpected and unconventional interactions with customers are used to promote a product or a service. So examples are flash mobs or quirky advertisements put in unexpected areas. It's about show, it's about spectacle, and it's a very fun and creative aspect of marketing and can have a big impact if done right. But the reason I add a note of caution is that guerrilla marketing can be pricey, can be logistically challenging, and can be hard to monitor, and also can be unfocused in the audiences you're targeting. I'd say by all means consider some guerrilla marketing if it's suitable for your brand and your purpose, but as with all aspects of marketing, it shouldn't be done in isolation. It should be part of a broader campaign, a wider strategy. So the key with all of these approaches, all these advertising approaches, is to think about who are the audiences you want to reach, where are they? Are they online? Are they locally? Are they going to supermarkets? Where are they going? What are they doing? What media are they using? Are they listening to the radio? Are they watching TV? And target them there. Target them where they are. I've got one more section to talk about now, and then we will be moving on to the Q&A section. So if you have any questions, do make a note of them, or you can pop them in the comments section, and we will get to those in a moment. So I'll just talk you through the final section, which is it's an option you might want to consider as it's free, but it requires a slightly different approach, and that is press. So that's getting your stories into the local media or national media as a news story. So this requires a different set of skills. You'll need to be able to identify the stories that are relevant to the press. So you'll need to be thinking about the stories related to your company that are human stories. Think about what is going to engage a large cross-section of society. Think about the emotion behind the stories. So if you have identified a story that you think the local press would be interested in, you'll need to write a short press release. I generally go for one A4 page, and you'll need to provide some high quality images to illustrate the story, ideally horizontal images as they're easy to use online. And you'll want to identify which media outlet is most suitable for your story. So I'd encourage you, if you're thinking of perhaps engaging with the press, is to start reading local newspapers, listen to the radio, listen to, the news, watch BBC South East and other news channels, and learn the types of stories that each individual outlet favours, because they all have their specific output, because they all have their specific audiences. You can find the email addresses for where to pitch your stories for all these outlets online with a quick Google, pretty easy to find them out. But be specific and strategic about who you pitch your stories to. If you do a bit of a scattergun effect, journalists know. So really try and make it very specific to the publication or even to the writer as well, and make sure your story is something that is press relevant. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope that gives you a lot to think about initially.